Greetings, everybody, and welcome back to episode 13 of the Ashes of Creation Community Podcast. I'm your host, the Big Chick Giant, and today's guests are the one, the only, Audio Senpai. How you doing, buddy?
I am doing fantastic. So glad to be a part of this.
Great to hear it. And also joining us today, and I hope I pronounce this right, Makinoji.
Yeah, you got it.
Yes! Yes! Awesome. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great.
All right, nice. All right, so first up, just because it's episode 13, and 13 being an unlucky number, I want to make sure everything is done correctly. I want to just say it again that this is a pro bono podcast for the community of Ashes of Creation. It's about the community, and that's it. I don't get money for this. I don't get keys for this. I get nothing for this. And yeah, I think that's all I wanted to say. Yeah, I think we're not getting paid for this. Like, I wish I would get paid for this. I could, would be fun, but I don't want to get paid for this because, I'm a nice guy. So, all right, let's
Oh, I don't know about all that.
Yeah, okay.
Lord of Salt.
Yeah, I take that back. I'm not a nice guy. I'm a horrible person. All right, let's jump right into the first topic. It's the same question I ask everybody that is on the show. So, Audio Senpai, I'm gonna ask you first. How long have you been involved with Ashes of Creation?
So I've actually been following Ashes since Kickstarter, but unfortunately, as many people know, Kickstarter is right around when I got confirmed with my first diagnosis of cancer. So cancer was my life for quite a few years there, and so living strong in remission, and decided to join the Discord. So I've been in the Discord and a part of the actual community for a little less than 6 months, but I've been following Ashes for a while.
Nice. Mackie, how about you?
Yeah, I started following in December of 2016, and that's about the same time I joined Discord when it got started. Yeah, that's about it.
All right, nice. So let's jump right into the first real topic. So what we mostly do on this show is because we do this every 2 weeks, because there is not always new information to talk about. So what we started doing on the show a while back, a couple episodes, is we're gonna do a lot of theory crafting based on the information we know, based on personal opinions, just so people get to know the community members that are on the show. So the first topic is going to be what sort of skills do you want for what class? By this I mean, we have seen some skills, we have seen some skills description, we have seen like a lot of images, but not for all the classes. So when I ask you what sort of skill do you want for what class, I want you to tell me what's your favorite class, and like what sort of skill that has not been shown yet or is not confirmed to be in the game do you want to see for your favorite class. So Makinoji, why don't you go first?
Okay. Well, I will be playing a cleric. I always like to play healers. I want to see the cleric have a little bit more of a knockback skills, maybe some more damage negation, shield spells of that nature. As far as other classes, one skill I would like to see the bard sort of have is like maybe an ethereal form, where they just go invisible and move around the team and buff or heal. Other than that, I don't really have any other like skills for classes I want to see. Maybe for staffs, maybe like a Gandalf type of slam down and knock people back.
All right. What about you, Audio Senpai?
Oh, there's just so many to pick from, man. So okay, so I'll pick one. I'll stick with one. So everyone knows I'm going to be playing a bard. It's who I am. It fits the persona. It's me. So no information about bards. Everything is speculation with them. But I would like to see incorporation of different themes from different cultures as far as dances go. Now, if you're thinking of the bard in terms of a buff class, right? We're expecting something along a buff class line. I would love to see something like, if you switch to a movement speed motif, then you would do something like a power slide across the room that you have to target into your party, right? So that those people get that kind of buff, things like that. So you can incorporate so much with that. You could do, power slides. You could do some kind of like breakdancing move that helps with dodging skills. You could do, something like a tango that helps with a DPS increase. I just want to see incorporation of animation with the bard, because I feel like that is something that can 100% be taken advantage of and really make this game unique. Final Fantasy just came out with the ability to quote unquote play songs within there. So, I mean, that's a thing that we already know it's possible. So we know it's doable. With Final Fantasy, it's very limited, right? They don't want you playing copywritten stuff and so on and so forth. But I would like to see that mixed into a rotation of such. So, like, if we think of how strong the music background for this game is, which the music they have very high expectations as far as the people that I've spoken to. If we can incorporate those kind of themes into a bard's rotation as far as the ability to heal, increase DPS, I think that it would make a very visually pleasing character.
So let me get this straight. So you want a skill, you want the bard to be able to he plays a buff for, like you said, movement speed. And then to apply that movement speed, he would have to do another animation to apply to the group.
Correct.
It kind of sounds like the guy from Overwatch, Lucio, when he does his buff. Yeah, like he dances around.
Yeah, I mean, I want to see. That's the thing, is like Unreal Engine 4 has so many capabilities as far as the way that the animations are done and the puppeteering that you can do with characters within the engine itself, that they have a really unique chance to, when they talk about bringing MMOs back, one of the things that people focus on is interaction, right? We're not just talking about going in and doing a raid fight or going in and doing it in a dungeon. You want to interact with the world, and what better to have your classes have if a cleric is going to heal, I don't want him to just raise his staff and everyone glows green. I want to see very high visuals that really show, like, if the animation is enough to where you could see on your equipment or on the character in detail certain scars that will appear throughout a battle, right? And you could see those scars be removed as the cleric is healing you. Things like that. Those are the kind of things that I want to see as a player anyways.
But wouldn't the fights have to be like really complex then? Because if a bard can, like you said, apply all these things, and we're going based on the thought that the bard is a buff class, and has a chance to, like boost healing, boost speed, boost maybe even damage. Wouldn't the fights just have to be like more complex so you can like really use the bard and not just stay in one stance? Makinoji, what do you think?
I would say yes, they would have to be a bit more complicated, but isn't that what we want out of Ashes? We want the fights to be meaningful or drawn out.
Yeah, I mean, like PvP wise, I think like we definitely gonna get that. Like, I'm just like wondering right now about PvE wise. So,
yeah, I mean, think of it in terms of like this. They've released some of the concept animations, like the tree animation that got released.
Yeah.
If you think in terms of scale, okay, that's a very large scale fight. There's got to be complexity to that. If there's no complexity to it, then people will get bored with the game. There are quite a few games out there that are in quote unquote Steam early access, as most people are calling it now, which is nothing like what Ash is going through. But AIs, and I hate to use the word, they're just retarded. They don't do anything. You want a challenge, and when you engross yourself in a world, you want even the non-playables around you to interact with you in a way that brings everything together, right? You don't want to just go out there and have a class that's shooting a bow and arrow at you and then you throw some spells at it and it's dead. That doesn't bring viability to it. Like, everyone remembers when you first get into an MMO, your first MMO, the thing that you're always hooked on is the interactions. And that's the big thing for me. I want to see interaction.
Makinoji, anything to add?
I don't have anything to add to that. I think you pretty much just summed it all up.
Yeah, I'm pretty speechless, but yeah, actually you hit the nail right on the head. So like personally, just to add it, like one of the things that I would like to see is I want to be able to sheep stuff, because don't judge me, but I still
They
think,
have that. It's called WoW.
I know, but I still think, even if you have a class that is called mage, I think it's you need to be able to transform people, or I don't know. I still think it's funny that you can turn people into sheeps. It still makes me laugh a little bit. It's like, yeah, look at that huge orc warrior coming near me. Oh god, I'm gonna die. Poof! He's a little cute sheep. I think that's funny, and it's something that other games have, other games don't. I could do with it, but I think I can also live without it. All right, let's jump right next to the next topic. Graphics are my enemy. There we go. Mounted combat. I did not check this before we actually got started, so I might be saying something that is not confirmed. But as I recall correctly, Steven stated that there will be some mounted combat, if I recall correctly, during one of the live streams.
I think it was mentioned like very briefly. I don't think it was like a hard sell. Like, this is something we're going to actually do. I think it was, hey, we'd like to do maybe down the road.
Yes. So when we say mounted combat, and in regards also to classes and whatever, what do you guys want to see? Like, what do you see if you imagine, okay, I want like mounted combat? Like, Makinoji, what do you want to see?
Okay, for mounted combat, I've never experienced this in a game other than like Skyrim. I would like to see like spears or arrows, or even like have mounted combat have its own ability bar when you get on your horse or whatever it is. So I don't know, just something unique and original to mounted combat instead of just our plain skill bars smashing at everybody.
How do you, Simba? What about you?
So I think mounted combat is a loaded question here. So the thing about it is that if we take into account the caravan system, if we're adding mounted combat on it, I personally think that it would be too overwhelming. But if we wanted to see it in an iteration that is unique, something very similar to like what Chronicles of Illyria is doing with like jousting. So you can do jousting, right? So you can set up, you have your horse, and you can change the armor that's tied to your horse, and then you can pick the weapon that you go into. If you want to clash with someone with swords, or you guys want to do some kind of competition with like a bow and arrow, or just regular old jousting, I think those would be cool. But I'm against mounted combat for two reasons, and one of them is going to be the most obvious. If you have mounted combat, you will not have regular ground combat. It just won't happen. Everyone will be on their mount, and they're going to want to do mounted combat, because moving from place to place in a world, that's a thing. You want to move from area to area as fast as possible. So I think if you incentivize mounted combat, you take away from the caravan system and the open world PvP that they're talking about. A lot of it is going to be within a certain area, right? So it would be very easy for mounted combat for you to mount up on a horse, run in as a wizard, and start throwing fireballs, and then run right back out of combat. I think it just takes away too much.
All right,
that's my big one.
I want to touch on that. I think it would add an extra flair to PvP in a way. I don't see it taken away from ground combat, only for the fact that they could add a system where if you were targeted while you're mounted, then you could be dismounted, and you won't be able to mount up for a certain amount of time. And also, I remember them saying that your mounts can be killed and then be respawned in a certain amount of time. So that could play well with each other.
Let me throw a couple things at you too. All right. First up, mounted combat. I do like the whole idea with lances and whatever. Because then when we're talking about sieges and large warfare, one thing that no game really has done is like cavalry or cavalry. Did I pronounce it right?
Close enough. Close enough.
Whatever. And so, they have no game has lances or whatever. Like the closest thing that I ever saw was Black Desert Online, where they have, they do have mounted combat. They have a set amount of skills that are usable on your mount, but they have different animations and they have different key combinations to actually do them. So what I would like to see, and what kind of makes sense for me, is if you do mounted combat, you do get a speed bonus because you're mounted, and you also get a slight damage bonus, and also you have a new skill bar when it comes to mounted combat. You don't have the same skills as you would have on the ground. For example, Wizard wouldn't have the fireballs and could just run around and shooting them. And then to balance it out, I would especially during sieges, I would add ways to prevent horse attacks from the cavalry, and add a damage bonus if you get dismounted. Meaning, if somebody knocks you from your horse, right, you get 50% more damage. And also add maybe a couple skills that have variations that are exactly just aimed to dismount people.
Another thing too, now that I think about it, now that you guys are bringing it up, one thing that I think would be very visually pleasing, so someone on a mounted combat, right, they're charging after you, they're chasing you, and let's say you are a tank, and you just plop down shield first with your sword over the top of your shield, waiting for them to ram into you. I think something like that would also be very visually pleasing, especially in a siege environment. Cavalry. If there was a cavalry aspect to it, that would change everything for me. I think you're exactly right that, because one of my big things. So I come from siege games, Dark Age of Camelot, Warhammer before it got ruined by EA. Those are two very near and dear to my heart games. So to those aspects of a cavalry and and having to have different units go in and more of their small battles within the large war of things, that I could see that.
I like that idea as well. Playing as a healer in different MMOs, I've always noticed that enemy teams that win, they always target the back line, or they flank to the back lines to take out the healers. So I could see this cavalry system kind of working that way, where an enemy team will just say, "Okay, let's take this flank, and go and kill all the healers in the back," kind of thing. And then they would have to come up with a strategy to take out the cavalry that is now essentially taking out their back line.
I mean, wouldn't it just add a new level of depth and complexity to large scales? Because the way I can imagine it is of course you have a mage sits on his horse, and he has a certain amount of skills that are meant to be mounted combat. But then you have maybe even just siege-related gear for mounted combat. For example, if you equip a cavalry shield and a lance, you get an attack bonus and a cane right in front of you. You get a speed bonus, but then you also have to you have to organize and do it the right way for it to be effective if you want to crash the enemy lines. You think they could put something like this in another game?
Well, I mean, so if we're gonna really theorycraft into it, so let's go back to the mage in mounted combat. If they add enough depth to the system, that opens up a lot of potential. You could not just be a mage casting from a horse. You could transform your horse. You could turn that into a fiery steed that when you run into, it's kamikaze, and you jump off of it and teleport out and blow up an enemy line. You could turn it into you could transform that. That could be something that the mage could be specialized at. So the concept is interesting. It's just that, with all of the already complex systems that are going in there, I could see why they wouldn't want to prioritize it. It's more of a hey, we'd like to do this. But the thing is, it's lore-wise, we don't even really know lore-wise behind sieges. We don't really know how advanced of a society we're going to be looking at. We don't really know skill depth. So, I mean, But it is an interesting concept. Like those kind of things I'd really love to see. I have a flashback of like the Lord of the Rings movie when the goblin hordes are running through to the elves' front line, and they have the big cavalry shields and the dual wielding swords, and they just flip the shield and just start cutting hands off. That is the kind of stuff that is, yeah, I can see that.
Mikinoji, anything to add?
Nope.
All right, next topic. Dum, dum, da, 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 da. No, I mean like I could see this to be added later on in the game to make sieges more like complex and you know like if you have players dedicated to mounted combat, you know you have a new way to actually do warfare, which I think is something they're aiming for, because the complexity of the game is that at least for me the complexity of the game is the more fun I have. But
sure,
but you know I'm
Always.
I mean, maybe it'll be a DLC content.
That would be awesome.
You know,
Right.
since I think the rumor is that Intrepid is actually EA now.
No, what?
Wait, what? No, don't.
All right, next topic. Summoner. We do not know a lot about the Summoner. Not a lot. We know that we will get some more information in January, February, and we know, like, Steven gave us bits and pieces of the Summoner. You know, he said once that the Summoner will do combat through his pet or through his summon, and we know that a group of Summoner can summon a huge golem-like creature for sieges. I think those are the only things that actually came to my mind when I actually wrote down the topic. So that leaves open a whole lot of space for theory crafting. So when I say Summoner, I personally am really, really concerned in a lot of ways. Because summoners in other games were horrible. I did not like the summoner in any previous MMO that I ever played, or any summoner class ever. I don't want the summon to be just like a pet, because that just, you know, then you're just like a hunter or something for me personally. I always thought that the summoner should be a mixture of you guys ever played Heroes of the Storm?
No,
I have not. No.
All right. In Heroes of the Storm, there's a hero called Rexor, and Rexor has to do with World of Warcraft. Anyways, I won't get into that. But the way the character is played, the character is actually two characters, and you can control both at the same time. So what I would like to do is that as soon as, you know, you play the summoner and you summon something, that your skill bar gets divided into two, and you actually have to control two people at once.
I like that idea very much.
And also because, you know, we when we say summon, and I listened to this in the community when I wrote down the topic, when I mentioned the topic summon, a lot of people were like, oh yeah, you need to summon this, you need to summon this beast or that. What if the summoner doesn't summon a creature? What if the summoner just summons different types of weapons? You know, for example, if the summoner summons a lance, he's a melee fighter. If he summons a bow, all of a sudden he's a range fighter. Because I thought about it that way, because the bard is really versatile apparently when it comes to supporting the other classes. What if the summoner is the opposite when it comes to, you know, dishing out damage? So what do you guys think?
Well, Como brings up an interesting point about that. As a subclass, I think it's very interesting. The concept of being able to summon different weapons to and have special abilities around that. For instance, you could be a summoner fighter where you summon a secondary weapon and you use different command keys to control what that weapon does. So it could be a slash from the right from your summoned weapon, a slash from the left from your summoner weapon, and it gives a little bit of depth to the concept of the actual combat that's going on. The thing that will be a big thing for me with summoners, and I think that in every single game that summoners do or are a part of, summoners have very clearly defined weaknesses. However, your pet always seems to counter that weakness. For instance, Blade and Soul. Your summoner is very, very weak, but you can get your pet and specialize in such a way that it is impossible for them to kill your actual summoner. So, like, those kind of things are real big things for me, because I think most people get frustrated with the fact that you have two characters there. so the weapon concept is nice. I still think that you can't take away creatures from a summoner though. So like a summoner cleric, maybe the specialty will be that the summoner will fight, but the pet is strictly for healing, but not in enough way to overpower the class, right? So you balance. I think that's going to be the big thing that people are worried about.
All right, Makinochi, what do you think?
The only aspect of summoner that I'm really interested in is the necromancing.
Necromancer.
Oh my god! Everybody wants to play a necromancer.
Yes. Like, imagine you just killed like a bunch of people, and you're a summoner or you're a necromancer, and you can just summon all these souls back to fight for you. Like, how awesome would that be?
I mean, think of it, and I hate to use it because this is going to get me in trouble with everyone that hates this game, but Mordekaiser from League of Legends, his ultimate, whenever he kills and your ultimate is cast on him, you have control over that as a physical shape. So imagine, like you said, a siege, and your necromancer goes out after wiping out the cavalry, and you summon 10 undead horsemen to just ram into the flank. I think that would be a very, very cool concept, but at the same time, when you go that far into it, balance is such a huge thing, because if that's the case, and that's what if the summoner is potentially limitless in the amount of interactions that it has and has no clearly defined weakness, then everyone's going to want to play that. So like something I always thought that summoner classes could do that that would counterbalance that kind of stuff is like Cheeky said, splitting it, right? 2 different control bars, right? So let's say you have to control your summoner with the keys on your keyboard, and you have to control the summoned pet or object with your mouse. Adds that level of depth. Also adds a complexity to the character itself, but doesn't make it overpowered, because if you're an MMO player and you suck at using your mouse, you're not gonna play a summoner.
Well, I mean, there are ways around that. I mean, like we still, because we still think of the summoner. He has to summon something. And he's going to summon something at some point. I think that's in the name. What I'm just worried about is that because most summoner classes I played, they just like it's a really hard class to design and to balance.
Yeah, I mean, you have to have clear, like, that's like the thing is like 64 classes, right? So every class has to have a clear identity, and there needs to be counters to it, right? Because we are in caravan, sieging, open world PvP. It really seems like they really want that to be a not an entire aspect of it, but a good part of the world building experience. So, and that's my thing with summoners. It's like, how do you balance something that is able to do everything? Like, if the summoner summons, like take Jack's example, right? So if you're a summoner tank and you summon a giant shield that blocks damage from one side, right?
Yeah.
That's a great concept, because there is a playability to that, right? You're trying to trigger this skill set to do this interaction so that you can counter it this way. But there needs to be a class that can counter that, right? So like if you've got a directional, like a fighter wouldn't be able to do that kind of stuff because they're up close and personal, whereas a ranger could. So I think that's the other thing too, is that I really want to hear more. I want the class list, because I think once we have names to the classes, we'll have a much better understanding of how complex of a skill sets we're going to be looking at. But that's my thing about the summoner, is that it's as a melee player primarily. I've always played tanks and rogues. Anything ranged is always hard to balance. So maybe one thing they can do with the summoners is like, if you don't add that level of depth to it, if your pet dies, right, you should take some kind of debuff to that. Like, oh, I'm sad my pet died. Like you just flushed your goldfish down the toilet. Something along that line to balance out those kind of strings.
Okay. Well, Makinochi, because your fellow necromancer enthusiast, what do you think about the summoner having the ability to have different types of summon in a skill bar?
I think this is very interesting when it comes to PvP. As far as depending on what type of animal or creature that they are allowed to summon, and the scale of it. I know they said about the golems being summoned during PvP. I'm curious if they will be able to interact with castle walls and city walls, because then that would put a disadvantage to sieges. You would just need a bunch of summoners to summon these golems and take down a city wall. So again, like Audio said, it's about balance. That's going to be a tough thing to do.
I think one thing I don't want them to do, because I just thought about this, is do not allow the summoner to summon things to buff himself.
Yes. And I think that anything summoned should have a duration. It just shouldn't matter. It shouldn't have a health bar. It shouldn't have a mana bar. It should have a duration with a very specific set of, you can do one of these 4 things. Now you can increase the output of those things or control what type of skills you're getting with your pets or your summoned weapons, whatever you want to go with that. But like, it's scary because they talk about getting a group of summoners together to summon a large monster for sieges, right? All right. Well, they're going to be relatively big servers. So what's to say that you don't just have a massive guild and you just have all summoners in that guild and they're all doing these massive pets? Like, how are we going to balance that? And again, it's theory crafting because we don't know what that's going to look like. But I think adding time durations to things would help with that too. Like, you shouldn't be able to infinitely have something that you summoned out of nowhere. It should tax, the summoner itself.
All right, let me ask one more question related to the summoner. We know how a lot of the classes look now. We know how the fighter looks, the tanks, the mage, the cleric. How do you guys think? What do you imagine the summoner will look?
Like Ash Ketchum.
No, like in the Ash's universe. Like, how do you think he will look like aesthetic-wise? The tank looks like a tank. The mage, he looks like a mage. For example, I imagine like just like honestly, I imagine Gandalf. But instead of having a staff, he just has, I don't know, a sword and a book. That's how I imagine the summoner. What do you, Makinochi? What do you imagine when you think summoner?
That's a good one. I think glowing eyes, glowing hands, like this mist around them, just like make him look badass. Like, I don't know.
Audio, what do you imagine? Please don't say you imagine a 14-year-old boy who plays with little animals.
So everyone knows that I've recently been given all of these animes to watch, and one of them was Fairy Tail. So I picture Lucy, right? That's right. That's what her name is. Yeah. Okay. So I can't say stuff like that, but actually I have a very clear definition of what I think it should be. So one, the concept of a summoner is that you're summoning something from another world, another dimension, whatever, right? You're pulling this out of thin air. So I think that in visually pleasing. So the glowing hair, ethereal thing, not so much, but maybe something with the eyes, something reflective of body character, right? So like, you have to, obviously, if you think in terms of, you put in this work, like, they didn't just reach out and go, oh, hamburger. No, that's not how that happened. You have to put in this work. So I want to see something with like very clear scars. Like, when you're creating a summoner and that's what you lock in as your class, you should have to have some kind of distinguishing mark that basically tells a story of what you went through to be able to summon XXX. So like, if let's say your summoner has the ability to heal to summon a phoenix, right? And that phoenix's job is to do micro healing and buff the party, right?
Yes.
So I want to see very clear burn marks all over the summoner. I want to see like burned flesh, those kind of things. I think would be really cool characteristics.
All right. Okay. So next topic. And I just want to add, I will definitely play a summoner, but I hate waiting. So yes, I want to play a summoner. Next topic. And node buildings and benefits. We know that there are going to be a lot of node buildings that the node leadership can build, and I know every second person within the community is going to have their own tavern, and everybody in Ashes of Creation is only going to drink beers and play games in those taverns, and the rest of the world is not going to get touched. That is an issue. I just wanted to address that. Let's move on. No, just joke. joke.
So, Lord
joke,
of Salt strikes again.
Wow.
Joke aside, so we know that the node leadership can build different buildings, with the tax money and resources collected by the citizen of the node. What sort of buildings do you guys see are going to be important? Me, for example, everybody can craft, right? Everybody can craft. If you as a node leader can give the order to build, I don't know, a certain building that helps push whatever job or crafting skill citizens have to a next level. For example, if you want to build siege weapons, everybody can build siege weapons in their own little stores or shops or whatever. But if you add a building that is just focused on building siege weapons, that you have a chance, that your citizens have the chance to build a higher tier of node of siege weapons. What do you guys think of that sort of mechanic?
I think.
Mekinoji.
Okay, sorry. That is actually a good idea. I like the fact that city planners will have a control over civilization like that. It reminds me of playing Civilization, where you have to have certain buildings before the other civilization does, kind of thing. Some buildings that me personally I would like to see would probably be like a boutique and a salon for players to come and recustomize their in-game avatars, either using real-world money or actual game currency to do it. I think that would be a really awesome thing in a city.
Okay. So, but how would you... Alright, so, but just to make sure, we're talking about a building that is built by the node leadership, not by individual people.
Right. This is going to be, they have to be built by the city. Like, the city will put money into the coffers, and then the planners will have to implement that building.
All right. Audi, what about you? What do you want to see?
All right, man. So, one thing that I feel that every single game gets wrong as far as an MMO goes, the marketplace. Man, I want to see so much activity in a marketplace. I don't want it to just be like, oh, I got to go here and turn in my honor to get this weapon. And there's nothing exciting about that, right? Like, one of the things that I really enjoyed about playing Final Fantasy is that when you go into certain sections, certain towns in the marketplace, when you're looking for these vendors, if you look at the level of detail, right? This vendor over here sells fruit, but different times that you go into there may be different pieces of fruit missing. So I want to see that kind of stuff. Like, one of the people in chat brought up is, I want to see crafting stations, and I want to see guild halls. I want to see shady bars where, less than favorable people are going to go to. For instance, like with the corruption system, if you've got that and you go into a town, you should be limited into what areas you can go into. So I really want to see development of a real marketplace, right? Like, if I want to go in, use a real world example, right? If I'm going grocery shopping, I'm not going to AutoZone to pick up bread and bologna, right? That's not what I want to see. So I don't want it to be like you go into a city that's very on the mechanical side. I want to see how diverse they can really bring it to life as far as the marketplace goes. Like, when you go to it, if you're going to craft, let's say that you're a crafter, right? You're a beginning crafter, and someone takes up an area of that marketplace that is a more expert crafting. Their setup should look better than what yours does, and I want to see those implemented in different varieties within an area, so to speak. Like you brought up with siege weapons, right? If you're a crafter, you should be able to build siege weapons, but you have to have a localized area to make stronger siege weapons, right? The military doesn't make their nuclear bombs at Radio Shack. That's not where they do that. They have a controlled environment that's designed for those kind of things. That's what I want to see.
All right. I think it is possible, actually, because let's be honest, like, if you're the leader of a node, you need to have some responsibility, and you're part of the planning process on how the future of your community looks. So I think having buildings with specific benefits for your community makes a lot of sense from a design standpoint, because otherwise, you're just gonna put in a lot of apartment buildings. Everybody has an apartment. I mean, like, if you decide our node is going to be a military node, and because we are a military node, there's a lot of buildings that are aimed for that goal. If you say, all right, we're just gonna be an economy node, you need more buildings that are aimed for economy. So I think we're actually going to see that in the game. Makinochi, what do you think?
Yes, I agree with you both. I think we will see buildings that will benefit that certain node, whether it's military, science, or religious. It will be up to the player base, though, to make sure that those leaders have a clear understanding of what they want in a city.
I mean, here's something that I like. This is one of the points where I still say this game is going to be a success. Is going to make a lot of people frustrated, because we know that every month, every 4 weeks, there is a chance of a change in leadership, and anybody who knows politics knows that politics are messy. So can you can you imagine? I don't know, pick whatever node you want, where you have a change of leadership, and the previous leadership was going in a different direction than the new leadership is going. So therefore, the work the old leadership did for the past 3 months is now it's worthless, because the new leadership wants to go a different direction. So I think the first year of Ashes of Creation, just because of things like this, is going to be chaos, complete chaos.
I want to touch on that. I can see if leadership goes a different direction than the previous leader. I could see a lot of cities or towns, smaller cities and towns, going broke because of all the resources that are not being utilized anymore. So that in turn, does that get refunded to the city, or what happens to those funds and to those resources that are no longer being used?
Well, I guess we have to wait and see.
I mean, you're talking about. I mean, in the concept that we're talking about now, as far as going from one leader to another. So yeah, that's commonplace in the real world. That happens all the time. But I think that if it's done properly, you're supposed to see in any grand scheme of a village going to a town, to a city, to a metropolis, to a world domination, you're supposed to see progression and regression. So I think it would be a really cool concept, like you said, is that, let's say leadership changes. Let's say you're a military node, and the people who take over from there are, no, we don't want the military node. We want to switch to an economy node. So there should be remnants of that. If you think in terms of new sci-fi cyberpunk, right? You go to a certain alley and there are remnants of where this building used to be an all-steel building that was made for making gun casings. So throughout the street, you'll see like littered gun casings and gunpowder. So those kind of things would actually, to me, improve the experience, because visually it's kind of appeasing to see the back and forth, the internal struggle. Like the politics of this game is going to be its own meta game by itself.
I gotcha.
Right.
I agree. All right,
but seeing buildings go back and forth, that would just be, I think it would be really cool.
I like that idea of seeing remnants of old projects in the city, but then you would have to take into account of city space. Like, what happens when there's too many old buildings and there's not enough space for new ones? Like, what do you do then?
What about this? What if, let's say, the new leadership wants to tear down a building, then it takes a couple weeks for the building to get torn down, and there are animations, the building goes back into construction and people walk by it for like a couple weeks and they're gonna tear this down. I love that building, that was an awesome tavern. What do you guys think about this sort of thing?
I mean, that's like everyday life, man. That's like you finally find the one coffee shop that doesn't overdo it on the coffee grains, and then they shut down. I think it adds world building to it. Like a big thing for me with any MMO, I'm first and foremost, I'm a hardcore PvEer. I will admit it. I like to jump into the PvE world. I like to do some role playing, but community building. So forcing these nodes to have different benefits, leadership going back and forth, 100% requires community building. Because if that's not being reached out to on a server level, every single city is going to be half-assed built. Use my language, but they're going to be half-assed built to where they're not taking full benefits of what could be going on. So then it's about establishing, lines as far as each node. Like people who migrate towards the northern section of the map, they might all be military nodes, and you'll start seeing people move from certain sections, and therefore now we're creating demographics, and that is actually kind of exciting.
All right, let's jump right next to the next topic. Graphics. Okay, what great ideas from past MMOs do you see making it into Ashes? By that I mean, if everybody who's watching, I think most of us that are watching and you two, we all played MMOs. What's like the one thing from other MMOs that you see could make it into Ashes of Creation? Mekanochi, you're going first.
All right. I would like to see public housing views. Like, say I own a house and I like the way I decorated it. So I want to give the public access to my home without them intruding or redecorating it, just for show. So I would like to see that kind of aspect.
So a lot, like, that sounds to me like Black Desert Online, because Black Desert Online has that.
Yeah, Black Desert had one, and SOTOR had something similar to it. I like those ideas.
All right. Audio Senbei, what about you?
Man, so Mekanochi, I think we're going to be at a disagreement. So I actually want that idea, but I want to be able to vandalize someone's house. So being able to play like a thief class and being able to sneak into someone's property, pick a lock on the door to get access to their stuff. I think it's one of the things that people enjoy about playing anything as far as an Elder Scroll game, right? The lock picking of that is its own little mini game, and I actually want to see that kind of stuff. So I'd like to see those kind of the way towns function in like a lot of the Elder Scroll games, where you could come in, you could have a certain level of notoriety, you may raise more suspicion based on how you play and involve yourself in the community. But I definitely want to be able to break into Mekanoji's house and smash all of his vases, but only the white ones. You know what I mean? Like, I want to be able to have that kind of mischief in the game.
You're cruel, man.
You sound like a horrible neighbor. Like a horrible neighbor.
I'm the worst neighbor. I'm the absolute worst neighbor.
All right, so are there any like real like any other like ideas from past MMOs that you guys see making it in the game? Like for me, for example, if I think about it, I really can't think of anything that I would like to see in the game. I would like to see just really good and well done in-depth naval combat. I think like
yes.
Ashes, not Ashes. I think Arcade does good naval combat to some degree. But I also would like to see like changing oceans. The way I want big waves. That's what I want. I want big waves that actually can maybe capsize maybe a ship. Okay, it doesn't have to capsize a ship, but make if there's a storm going on, you see it in the waves. That's what I would like to see.
I like that idea. I'm with you on the naval combat and environmental interaction with that. As far as big waves, not capsizing, like you said, maybe capsizing. Throwing ships into the rocks, things like that. That'd be so awesome, I think.
What do you think, Audio?
So I have one that's a little bit unique that I'm going to take from, again, another anime that I've started to watch recently. So I want the way events work within the world to be different than a boss has spawned and there's an announcement, right? I want people to have to happen upon an event. Like, something like from... where I'm at in this particular one, with Sword Art Online, where they had the Christmas event, and you had it starts out as like a rumor within a tavern, and you have to go out and find a certain location. Which at that point, once you find that certain location, you then will summon a boss to that location, but only if someone actually finds it. Right? I want there to be secret events that aren't broadcasted. I think that broadcasting events takes away from the mystery of a world, and I want that to go away. I hate that. If I'm really in the zone and I'm moving around and I'm exploring and I find something, at that point it should be triggered like everyone. Oh, this has now been found. Here's where it happens, and I want those events to rotate in a better way. I don't want them to be like in this specific area, go you kill a boar and now mama boar comes out. I don't want that kind of stuff. I want the events to rotate constantly throughout the zones.
Okay, so no server messages, pretty much.
Server messages are important for the right things, like certain events, sure. But I think that the players should be able to make those server. Like if you discover an event, you should automatically be tied to as the leader of this event, and you can decide if you want to announce it. Whereas, like if it's just like kill 10 boars, you may not want to do that. You want me to just do that by yourself, and you don't want everyone to come in there and ruin the experience for you.
Here's a way I always thought of stuff like this should be done. Let's say something happens near a node, and I don't know, the queen of all boars attacks the node. Then starting from that node, you have NPCs running to the other nodes, you know, like spamming a message. And then from those nodes, more NPCs run to the next nodes, and then therefore, you know, it is a server announcement, but you can't read it in chat. You have to read it in like local chat or whatever. What do you guys think about that?
I mean, I can get behind it. You know, like I guess to kind of like lay out my vision where I'm going with this. So, the Sword Art Online, that was a good one, but I'm really into like Log Horizon right now. And one of the things that happens within that is that the Goblin King event. So everyone knows about the event, but I want there to be consequences for not completing events. Like if you don't go kill X amount of boars in this area, I want it to be like Mississippi, where they're overrun with a boar population and it gets worse and worse and worse, and there are real world consequences. Like you have a goblin population, and annually they go through like a breeding process, right? But if you don't go out and crush those camps, then the breeding gets out of control, and they start attacking the node, and therefore causing a PvE siege where it's non-playables versus the actual community of the node.
I gotcha. No, I like that idea. Makinoji, any other ideas you would like to see in Ashes?
Yeah. Diseases, plagues. I want to see that be a real thing. What else? Let's see. I had another one. I totally forgot. One thing that's not in game, but it's part of like the actual game mechanic. I don't know. Trials for new players. They sign up. They get 3 to 7 day trial, and then if they want to buy the game, they can buy the game.
So you said diseases. I have to ask. Did you ever play World of Warcraft when the plague spread with World of Warcraft and what that happened? So it was awesome for some people, but in general, it was a terrible experience. If you were level 1, you were dead. Those kind of things, I don't know. That's kind of scary. If there's a way to counter it, it may be like a fun, you know, event that could happen. But adding like diseases and plagues, that requires like the complexity of the event intrigues me, but at the end of the day, are you on a server that you can depend on your community to combat something like that? Like, I mean, what happens if no one combats that event? If we stick with my idea of it gets worse and worse, and then the server is literally dead. You can't. Everyone's a zombie. All necromancers reign supreme, and everything is falling apart, and the water's black.
No. I gotta put my foot down on this one because you know. I don't want to use the term Care Bears, but if you put something like this in the game, right, you have to put in a way to counter it, right? And if your community, if your node, if your community, I'm not talking about guilds. I want to say screw guilds. I'm talking about your community, your node community. If you work together and you find a cure for that plague, and nobody else on the entire server finds it, right, and you just keep the freaking thing for yourself. I'm fine with everybody else turning into a zombie for a couple of days, you know, and you rule supreme for a couple of days.
Right.
Why not? I mean, you know, the game is based on changes, right? The game is the core idea of Ashes is that the world is always changing because of what we do. If we go and piss off, I don't know, whatever, the Lord of Sandals, and the Lord of Sandals, praise His Holiness, decides, you know what, I don't like you guys anymore. You guys are not like doing the whole hey. You know what? I'm gonna rain a plague upon you. Boom. Consequences.
I mean, consequences is fun to an extent, right? But if you if you have too much change, then you don't have anything that creates a following to expand out the world. So, like, let's stick with the plagues in our example here, right? So let's say Makinoji gets really upset and he goes off into some unknown cave and he finds a secret mushroom and he makes a potion that he throws at one person, and that starts a plague event, okay? Now, only the people who get infected with the plague know about what's going on, right? And it keeps breeding out, and it keeps breeding out, and it keeps breeding out. And then Q, higher level players, right, that just don't want to get evolved, and they keep moving from one area to the next, avoiding this plague. In theory, it sounds awesome that for a couple of days, everyone's going to be a zombie. But then it also sounds like you're going to be driving away the population that just doesn't want to deal with it. So they just log out for a couple of days, and then you start leading into desolate servers. So it's like a catch sword. Like, you have to really know what your community is actually going to, like, if that's something, it very well could be a thing, right? It could. Let's just say I throw smoke into the air and I found another mushroom, and this one gets everyone, whenever you type in general chat, it's like you're drunk. And like how WoW did it, where you would type one sentence and your character would just go, no, hiccup. Those kind of things can get real tedious fast.
I know, but isn't that what we kind of want? We want that chaos. We want a way to resolve it. Because honestly, if I don't want the game to be stale. Like, and if let's say if Makinoji decides to poison the entire server, but we know there is a cure, right? And let's say, I don't know, Audio Senpai finds the cure, but he doesn't have enough resources to, you know, create enough potions for the entire server, then every node leadership has to put in a quest. Like as far as we know, node leaders can start quests where they reward their citizens for collecting the items that you need to make the potion, and therefore everybody knows, hey, Audio Senpai, the savior of the server, he saved us from the Makinoji plague, hail him. I mean,
man, I'm not leaving my tavern if there's a plague going on. I know right now.
I mean, the point that I wanted to make is just, you know, making these sort of things, I think, is what a lot of people want, because it is something that is new. It is something that is actually challenging. It's something that can, like, just shock us to our core. Because otherwise, if you just put it into a little zone and, you know, it just goes away at some point, it feels a little bit stale, and then it would feel a little bit boring. Because we want impact, right?
You're correct. I mean, I had to do the plague because he broke all the vases in my house, but
oh, so this is a revenge plot. Okay.
But
like, I'll show you.
But it would add an interesting dynamic to the world. Say the religious nodes, if you go and you pray to their god or do a quest for their god, they'll give you a cleansing from this plague, you know. Or scientific nodes, they could get their population involved in you know, doing these quests or collecting these things, and that would add like an interesting kind of dynamic to the world.
Yeah. So I think it would be cool to see something like that, but we have to wait and see, because, you know, it might work, it might not work. You know how people are. All right,
Man, you got me to think about this now. Like, after a siege, what if the necromancer doesn't clean up the bodies, right?
Dude, trust me, like, when I'm not doing these things, it's all like, I think about so many ways, like, stuff they could put in the game. Like, yeah. All right, last topic. That's topic for today, because we're actually running a little bit out of time. Underwater combat. Because we know, because of the Kickstarter, that naval combat is confirmed. Naval combat means, hey, we need something to put the ships on, which means ocean, which means new areas, which could mean underwater stuff. One of the things that I always hated is underwater combat, because of the reason it just, you know, there was not any, like, real dodging, or you're just in one spot and you just spam your skills. I think Guild Wars 2 was a little bit fun. World of Warcraft was just horrible. World of Warcraft, the underwater combat, I did not like one bit. So when I say underwater combat, what ideas come to your mind to make underwater combat more exciting? Makinoji, what do you think?
Okay, underwater combat. I really don't have much to say about this because I'm not a big fan of it. Only thing I would be concerned about is how to counteract people or groups just hiding underwater and destroying ships that pass by.
Okay. I never experienced that, but yeah, I think Well, there are ways. You just I don't know, put a little bit of blood in the water. I guess the sharks can do it.
Like, how do you breathe?
Simbi, what do you think?
Well, I'm personally going to be a bard pirate tavern owner. So underwater combat fascinates me in one of two aspects. One, if it's anything like World of Warcraft, I'll probably kill myself before it ever happens. But I think it gives a level of strategy to it. So naval combat is going to be very interesting. So if that's going to be happen, there has to be a maneuverability for the way combat would work in water. So I guess the big thing for me would be is maybe something specific to what your character does, right? So like if you're a warrior, right, you may be able to issue out a high amount of damage. You can move underwater quickly and get to people quickly, but you have a breath limit, which means that you can't just dive all the way down and be down there forever. I don't want to see the ability for water breathing. I want that to not be a thing 100%. Like maybe something like from Harry Potter where you can cast like a bubble charm on your head and it lasts for X amount of time. Something like that would be okay. But I don't want there to be like an underwater breathing thing. Also with underwater combat, harpoons. I want to see harpoons. I really do. That would be maybe a good way for like you to latch onto enemy. You fire out your harpoon, target and reticle, and if you hit the enemy, you can use that to pull yourself to them and thus engage in combat that way.
All right. What I always wanted to see, and I thought about this as well, and actually we have to wrap this up really soon. I always thought that water combat should have water currents to it. For example, if there's a big storm that you get moved around, like you just don't sit still at one spot, you get moved around. And also, for example, having fire skills underwater is like a no-go for me. Lightning should hurt yourself.
Well, fire skills
definitely.
should create like underwater, like it should create like
Steam.
You should create steam. Like there should be, if you cast an ice spell underwater, I think any spell that you cast, like ice, lightning, fire, it should impact you in a way too, right? Like you can't just summon a fireball into the water and I can see just fine. Hello, little fish. That shouldn't be a thing. Like if you cast an ice spell, then there should be like a small dot of like a freezing debuff. Like I'm freezing. I gotta handle my business and get the fuck out of here, kind of thing.
All right, Makinoji, anything to add? Because we have to wrap this up.
No, I'm good.
All right, so I want to thank you both for joining us, for joining me. If there are any questions from the chat, now will be the time to ask. I know Como asked about his mountain. I don't know. I guess mountains are nice.
It's a nice mountain, but it's definitely definitely lonely.
Yeah,
I think he was talking about mountaineering, like being able to climb mountains and explore mountains.
Oh yeah, climbing. I think we know climbing is in the game definitely, but we don't know to what depth. So Audio Simbi Makinoji, Audio Simbi can go first. This is the point at the podcast where you can plug yourself. So go ahead while I go through chat to find some questions.
Sure. Yeah. Wait. No. Go.
I have a lot. Okay. Shout out to the Ashes community writers for the great content they keep providing me every week. Shout out to Daedalus, my co-founder and writer for the Ashes Herald. Quick shout out to the Sons of the Seven, my amazing guild, and our guild leader Telcar. If you're interested, check out our Discord or follow our links for more information. Follow me on social media. Follow my YouTube channel, Anthology. Subscribe for all kinds of content. And thank you, BCG, and all the content creators for Ashes. We love you guys.
Wow. So I got to follow up with that. Okay. Well, I don't have any kind of content that I create. So I just want to thank, the Ashes community as a whole for keeping things interesting on a day-to-day basis. A lot of the reason that people are so fascinated with this project is because of the community. Also, I'd like to go ahead and plug in my guild here, part of Cohort, great community. We are going to be a family progression-based guild. Specifically, we're very, very interested in naval combat. So if you guys are interested, all you got to do is hit up me or Tug on the Discord or on the forums, and just stay beautiful.
All right, awesome guys. All right, I think I got one question. It's a long one. I'm trying to sum it up. So what sort of, I guess, siege defenses do you guys think should be most definitely in the game?
Oh man, it so depends on the node though, right? Like if you're a military node, it should be something like, like large warfare catapult fireballs going through. But if you're like an economy based node, it may be like secret underground tunnels that reveal traps and stuff. If you're like more of a science node, maybe you have like a instead of a wall, you just have a large force field that the spear that encases the city. Those kind of things I think would just be, oh, that'd be so great.
What do you think, Mike?
Wow. Yeah, I agree with Audio. Like anything you can imagine is pretty much what I would want for defense. Like ice walls, firewalls, bringing gargoyles to life. Defend for you. All kinds of crap. Like bring it on.
I want like over your gate, right? How they do like the burning oil, and they used to dump that on me. I want to be the guy that pulls the lever, right? Like that is like I want to be that guy. I'm the lever guy.
All right.
Like, oh, you're gonna take down my gate? Nope. Molten lava.
Well, Alpha Zero is coming up soon, so we might actually get to see a siege. We don't know yet. Maybe possible. I cannot talk about it because
Yep. Can't confirm or deny.
Can't confirm or deny. But
let's just hope. Right?
But it's like one of the things I'm really looking forward to. Okay, so everybody, thanks for watching. Thanks you two for joining me. And I see you all on the Discord, and we will be back with episode 14 in 2 weeks from now.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.